Welcome to the reorg webinar organized as part of ICCROM lecture series. It is dedicated to the thousands of museums around the world that struggled with overcrowded and disorganized storage. We will be together for the next 90 minutes. My name is Catherine Antomarchi. I had the joy and honor to lead the collections program at ICCROM. I will moderate this session with Simon Lambert, Manager of Preventive Conservation at the Canadian Conservation Institute. Simon has been closely involved in the development of the reorg method since the beginning. He is also the one behind the Canadian reorg national strategy. Reorg is a step-by-step method to help museums regain control of their collections in storage and unlock their potential as sources of knowledge. The method was first published in 2011 after 3 years of development and field testing in various countries. This was possible thanks to the support of UNESCO. Since then, over the last 10 years, ICCROM and national and international institutions use the reorg method to offer hands-on training initiatives, 28 so far, and to implement national strategies that would meet local needs. Individual museums and professionals use the online resource to implement their own reorganization projects. The reorg resources have not been static. In fact, they have continued to evolve over the years based on the experience gained in a wide variety of contexts. The latest version was produced by ICCROM and CCI and has been translated into 7 languages. As of today, over 150 museums in 34 countries around the world that we know of have applied the method. The network of users continues to grow larger and stronger.
Hi, everyone. Today's webinar aims to create a bridge between professionals who have applied reorg in their own institutions and those among you who are thinking about doing it. Many questions and concerns can emerge when you're considering launching a reorg project. Who better to talk to you about these concerns than those who have done it, those who have applied reorg in their own institutions. In the last few weeks, we collected the thoughts and experiences of reorg users from different countries and museum contexts. They are archaeologists, art historians, conservators, directors, or managers. Some of them are present with us today. So I'd like to now invite all of those who are present to turn on their cameras to say hello to our audience.
Hi, everyone.
Here they are. Hi.
Hello.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I now invite you to turn off your camera.
Thank you, dear reorg users, for being with us. In a few minutes, we will present a video containing excerpts from our interviews with you. After the video, there will be time for questions to a panel of reorg power users and trainers. I name Gaël de Guichin, Marioline Desbulpap, and Velkio Dizix. Please, could you, the panel, turn on your camera? Gaël needs no introduction. We owe him the concept of reorg. Over the past 14 years, he also spearheaded the development and expansion of the reorg community through public lectures and training activities in nearly 20 countries. Marjolein is head of the Preventive Conservation section at ICCROM in Belgium. Beyond organizing the reorg Belgium national strategy, she also organized international initiatives to raise awareness on this issue and engage museum participation. Velkio is senior conservator at the National Museum in Serbia. For years, he has been actively engaged in disseminating reorg in his country and in the country of Southeast Europe, as well as in international training with ICCROM. Dear panelists, I ask you please to turn off your video.
Great. So welcome, everyone. So to get us started, we prepared 2 questions for you, the audience. They will appear on the screen. So I'd ask Alice to post them on the screen. And we'll give you 1 minute to answer both questions. And we'll discuss the results after we play the video. So the poll is open now. I've been told that you must scroll down to see both questions, I think, for the poll.
I can see them well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm told that we're going to close the poll now. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing the results after the presentation. Before we begin, I wanted to point out that starting now, you can send in your questions and comments using the Q&A icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. We will try to answer as many questions as possible after the presentation. If we're unable to answer your question during the webinar, please send us an email at reorg@icrom.org. So that's reorg without the hyphen, just REORG at icrom.org. And someone will get back to you after the webinar.
I would like to ask now our colleague at ICCROM to start the presentation. And with Simon, we will close our, whoops, how do I close? Yes, here. Okay. Question 1. One issue that often comes up is that it can be difficult to convince management to engage in a storage reorganization. What is your experience?
I come from Slovenia, which is a very small country, and the museum community is even smaller. So we know each other, and we trust each other, and also we trust organizations like ICCROM and ICOM and all these museum associations. So we had very good experience, for example, some years before reorg with risk assessment projects, which was also organized by ICCROM. So I had absolutely no problem to convince not my director to allow me to interfere with our collections, because they didn't know what the outcome would be if a reorg is really good, and who is it good for? For collections, or for curators, or for whom, or for politicians maybe. But also all these museum associations, including ICOM Slovenia, they all also financially supported us, to apply and use reorg and spread the knowledge around. So it was easy in Slovenia.
First is to demonstrate using good case studies from other part of the world where ICCROM demonstrated the success of reorg. So in our own case, we presented PowerPoint to show how one can solve a problem without having to attract extra funding to create space. So what it means with what you have, you can create more space and solve a problem. So it convinced the administration to say, oh, let's go into this. And beyond that is the fact that you can apply reorg to solve everyday problem as well, to create space, because every institution is bedeviled by lack of enough space for almost everything to do with books to do with archival sources and what have you. So demonstrating that is a model, a framework that worked somewhere and that is good as well for our local situation in Nigeria.
Well, this is the issue which is very interesting for me because I'm on the managerial level. So I don't think it's only the managers who are the problem. Actually, all the staff has to admit themselves that they have an issue with the storage. This is the first step. And then they have to, see that this is the consequence of some past circumstances, let's say, and that they are not only connected with the lack of money. Mm-hmm. So you have to admit yourself that you can do something even with a little money when you decide to change the behavior and modus operandi in the institution. Actually, if there is, a real wish from the staff to do it, they can persuade any management to do it. Okay. But the problem is you have to have either the initiative from above, or you really have to have the majority of professionals in the museum being, willing to change the situation in their storages.
Question 2. You had more than one storage room in your museum, which is the case for many listeners out there. How did you decide where to begin?
Well, in the storage rooms where I worked, we had over 30 storage rooms. So at first I felt a little bit overwhelmed too, like, oh my God, where do I have to start? So I talked a lot about it a lot with Marjolaine, and we actually decided to focus on the collection that was used the most, actually. So it was a very big collection of, I think, 5,000 pieces. And there were a lot of researchers, professors, students, a lot of people asking access to it. But it was quite difficult to access because, well, it was in a very bad shape. It was stored very badly. So we decided, like, okay, that's our most important collection at the moment. And we don't have enough racks. We don't have enough furniture. So we're going to focus on that one.
In Lagos Museum, we had 6 storage units. Store 1, 2, 3, 4, very large. It was both up and down, and there were many, many objects there. But because of the limited availability of funds, we said, let's take store 5 and 6. These stores, 2 stores are together. And it's in 5 and 6 that we have most of our priceless objects. I'm not saying other objects are not priceless, but what we call in our Nigerian terms, the classical objects.
In our case, we had the situation that we recognized, actually we had 3 places recognized or used as storages. We realized that we have to start somewhere and that we don't have enough space and time and people to do it all together and to separate it, divide it, not enough money, of course. And then we decided to start with the main storage where the most of our collection were placed.
In our own case, we realized this at the onset that in fact, some storages were at the annex outside the main buildings of the museum. So they are scattered. You have storage 1 in one building and storage 2 in another. So we prioritize based on the value of the objects that we have. So what is key to us is the fact that archaeological objects followed by ethnographic collections. So that is the guiding principle. Yeah, not the size, but the fact that the mandate is to do with archaeology, followed by ethnographic collections, So we prioritize this. How do we create a friendly environment for the archaeological objects first?
Question 3. Some museums may be concerned to start reorganizing their collections physically without having a completed inventory. At what moment in the process did you address this issue?
We have the legal obligation in our museums to have the inventory. Actually, there is also a legal obligation that every museum object that enters the museum for becoming a part of collection should be inventorized in 30 days.
Okay.
In spite of this legal obligation, which is in the museum law, people don't do that. So you find stored objects in museums, not only in storage area, but in the rooms of curators, different parts that are not properly inventorized. The problem is that the numbers are usually given, but then there is not a good list according to which you can trace where the objects are. What is also important is the regular reviewing of the collections. We also have it in our law. Every 5 years, each museum has to do a complete review of the collection. That means checking whether certain object is present or missing, or whether you have objects that are in the collection, in the storage, and you don't have the inventory number of them. Mm-hmm. The people were not doing this for years, for decades. And then there is a huge problem of identifying where the objects are. So when I took over the museum in 2015, my first order was to review the collections. And then we had several thousand objects which were either missing or could not be found, or some are found but are not inventorized. And then we needed a lot of work in order to improve the situation. And our reorg training took place in 2017. So in between the two reviews of collections, and it helped a lot. It is because then if you have, if you don't have objects in a pile, but if you have a kind of system according to which they are rearranged, then you can easily do the review of the collection and you can pinpoint the objects which you are looking in your inventory if they are there.
So we only had a partial and honestly a little bit inaccessible formatted Excel-based inventory. And this inventory was conducted the previous year. It didn't really break down what we have in a meaningful way for the reorg, but we were able to use this to have an idea of what we had in the collection. So it may pose a challenge, but it definitely is possible to start the reorg without having an inventory. It'll pose a problem in terms of estimating spatial requirements and storage furniture.
We made the decision during the project, or in the sort of planning phase, that we wanted to conduct an inventory during the project as well. So it became an add-on, which I would say did add a fair amount of time to the project. It was an additional step. But for us, because there was a partial inventory and that a lot of objects were numbered, not all objects in our collection were numbered, it felt feasible to sort of throw in this inventory. And hopefully our goal was to track objects as they move by doing this inventory, assigning locations to numbers, temporary locations to objects and swing spaces, but also identify found in collection objects with a specific numbering criteria, numbering format, so that we might not be able to address problems in those moments, but we could start coming up with a list of objects in an inventory that are problematic for the future and that do require future curatorial research or insight to clarify their numbering and hopefully match provenance to the objects.
My answer would be that actually we did it during, but I need to clarify that actually we had a collection registered and we had a documentary and lists of inventory for part of our collection, but for the rest of collections that were placed in that storeroom, we had a list of acquisitions. So we were sure about what is happening and what we have to deal with. And we actually were sure not to lose anything because we had a swing space, and directly, according to the lists, we moved all the objects there while into the temporary space. And while working on documentation, additional photographing, measurement, checking inventory lists, we were cleaning and preparing the main storage.
We did it after. I was relatively new in my position, and I was the longest serving employee. We didn't know what we had. We had a vast number of objects, and we started working on an inventory, and it became apparent very quickly that it would be easier for us to do the reorganization and then do the inventory. We finished our inventory probably 3 years after we did the reorganization. We went through and did a very, very complete inventory, but no, you don't need to do the inventory first.
Question 4. In most cases, there are items in storage that do not belong to the collection. How did you deal with this?
There were a lot of items in the collections room. We called our storage room the collections room. We've only have one collection room. And some of the stuff was not collection material. It was more stuff to store things in or furniture. That stuff we set up another location for and moved that right out. There were other objects in there that we didn't know if they were artifacts. Because we had so many objects like that, we opted to do an exhibition because it allowed us to go to the public and say, help us identify some of these items, as well as it provided storage because we didn't know where else we were going to put them. In the end, what happened is a few items were identified, but the majority of them we took a real hard look at. We inventoried those items, and some of them were deaccessioned, some of them were incorporated into our collection because we figured out what they were and realized that even though they may not be an official object or an official artifact at that point, they belonged in our collection.
What we did, some objects, first of all, non-collection, you have things like some of them had foams, cans, different objects that were just kept there. Some people used it as storeroom, so we had to remove all those things. The non-essential, we took it out of the store. For objects that had no inventory, what we did was to go back to the catalog and see whether we can have any information about those objects. We also gave some people the task of researching about those objects. I want to say that some of those objects that were non-collection per se, some of them were seized items, but were not given inventory at that time. The reorg helped us to identify such. And I think what we did was to give them numbers and make them part of the collection. But the non-essential that were in the store, we all removed them out of the store totally. And that makes for space and easy accessibility. Some we took to other storage in the museum, like books and the rest that were found there, we took them to the other storage where you have books.
And we went through each and every item, and then we posted it all the way through them. Red was throwaway. Then we had some items that didn't belong to the museum, that actually belonged to another museum. So we're like, okay, we're sending that one back to the other museums. Then there were items that used to be a part of the collection, but weren't very suited anymore in the collection, because we all know it, every museum has way too much stuff. And then the last category was keep and register in the database.
Question 5. If your storage rooms is so full and overcrowded that no extra space seems available, can reorg still help?
Actually, the museum, the storages that we had before reorg had all the unused and abandoned showcases. We had the ladder. We had the cleaning equipments and chemicals within the space of the storages itself. So everything was just there apart from the exhibitions that we had. In fact, sometimes you have even stationaries, journals that were published 40, 50 years ago, but that are not part of the collections, were kept in the storages because the perception then was they were, as Department of, as a museum, where they were valuable to us. But when we realized we could not solve the problem, without them, so the realization that we have to create hierarchy and recognize what is an object and what is not made us to be radical about this, to remove everything. In our own case, we have saved up to 40% of the space because, in fact, we have created an office, a storage that we thought needed to be there for our collections was freed.
In our case, the big eye-opener was to measure everything. It's a lot of work, but it really helps to see and make plans. It's a lot of preparation, but it's really worth it.
We had that situation, and when we entered the storeroom, the first one, that was the main one for us, we were thinking that we were absolutely, almost completely full, like 95%, because we were using old furniture, old equipment, everything was kind of crowded, or actually it was just not well organized. So we decided to consult architect to help us reach actually the maximum point and get the most of the space that is available for us, that was available. And then we decided that the best opportunity for us is actually thanks to the reorg methodology and evaluation before everything, that the best thing for that collection that was placed there is to use compactus, new furniture, completely new compactus elements, and supported by the shelves and some small hanging parts. We created a project application, we created a project plan with architect, and we proposed it to our Ministry of Culture, and we were very happy and lucky to get the support. And we managed to purchase new equipment, which is not usually the case. We all know that it is quite expensive. But we had that chance, and we used it we used that money to purchase the equipment, which actually provided us almost maximum use of space.
Question 6. How did you estimate storage furniture needs for the many objects that were on the ground?
So estimating storage equipment just in general was a daunting task. We had a lot of objects in co-stewardship agreement stored in boxes on the ground and found in collection objects as well as collection objects. And this compounded by the fact that we had a large number of objects that were stored folded in boxes. We did end up requiring more shelves and compact or mobile shelving than we anticipated. And so how we dealt with that was really to open the boxes. And it was really as we were going through the objects that were found on the floor, how many things were in the boxes, because we didn't know, other than visually seeing the box, knowing that there might be more than one, we didn't know how many we would find. So we just had to go through the boxes, and actually we needed more shelves than we anticipated for all these objects that were found on the floor.
In retrospect, I think if we would have addressed all the objects in boxes that we couldn't quantify at the beginning of the project, we would have had a better idea about how much more to order, and we would have been able to make those decisions earlier on in the project, because it did bump our timeline a little bit, having to wait for additional shelving to come in. But in the end, it wasn't make or break for our project, but that would be my recommendation for those facing similar problems in the future. I'd have to look up the number, but around 60 something 23-inch by 23-inch by 4-inch high boxes. And in those boxes, there were 166 objects of varying sizes, shapes, 2-dimensional, like textile, 3-dimensional objects. And that was where I think about 20 to 35% more of our storage furniture had to be allocated to those objects.
Yes, we did have a lot of objects on the floor. Almost everything was on the floor. And actually, because it was a lot of big objects like chairs, tables, closets, like big, how do you call them? Weapons, cannonballs and stuff like that. So the big objects, we measured them all separately. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And then the smaller groups of objects, we measured them like in bulk, to say it like that. And then I drew them all out in a plan, and I drew our future racks in a plan. And then I kind of like fitted all the virtual objects in the racks. And then you could see like, okay, I need 5 racks with each 5 shelves to store all these chairs and all these tables. So actually, we started with measuring everything. And I know it seems like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, but it will help you save a lot of time when you do the reorg implementation, because then you already have everything on paper actually, and then you can just say, okay, that object goes over there on that shelf. So I think the total of objects we had was 5,000, but I think we measured approximately maybe 700 or something, and like everything else were small objects, more in bulks, or were already in boxes, so that made it a little bit easier. It's like, it's not that you have to measure every small object to see where it goes in the shelf. You can take lots of small objects and measure the whole bulk of them, and then say, okay, this group of objects goes in that shelf.
Question 7. Some museums have very mixed collections. What was your approach to regrouping your collections?
We did have a very large mixed collection. We had chairs, tables, furniture, weapons, small weapons, big weapons, spears, swords, paintings, archaeological items. What else was there? There was a lot of pieces of middle-aged wood. And so we thought it was easier to not separate them by material, like say wood goes with wood and metal goes with metal and paintings go with paintings, but it was easier to see, well, to use the 12 categories that are also in the workbook, like say very long objects, very large and heavy objects, 2D paintings, small 2D items, big, And because it focuses more on the way you will store these items, and it has a more practical way of dealing with them. So you can really buy your furniture having in mind, okay, this is furniture for big heavy items, and this is furniture for very small objects, and this is furniture for 2D objects, because you can hang them on a rack, or you can make a storage for your paintings. And so it's really more practical to identify your objects by shape rather than by material. And don't go too far in it. Don't say like, oh, we have a very small item and we have a very medium item and then we have a larger item. Just go with heavy, small, light, 2D, and that helps. Just follow the workbook.
So that was also difficult because I think there was a lot of objects that we had little idea going into it what their dimensions or size would be like, and none of us were extremely familiar with the collection. So it was a big learning process. We went into it using that original sort of 2018 inventory that was conducted that was helpful but not helpful, and to try to group objects and say, okay, like this is how many moccasins we have, this is how many mucklucks we have. We ended up finding it a bit more useful going with the function criteria, trying to come up with a broad function first, or like an object type. So for example, we looked at like textiles, and from textiles, how many of those textiles are oversized and need to be rolled? Of those textiles, how many are flat textiles, but with a three-dimensional, sort of a little bit of a three-dimensionality. So like a beaded object or a purse. How many textiles that we have are completely flat, so like a long belt, for example. And from there, we could break things down into reasonable categories and say, okay, these objects can be all stored in a cabinet drawer together. These objects all can go on an open shelf together.
Question 8. In a recent survey, 70% of people said that lack of funding was an obstacle to embark on a reorg project. What do you have to say about this?
You will be surprised to know that all the reorgs that we have done with either very little budget or no budget. So I am of the opinion that reorg can be done even without having a single penny in your hand. All that you need to know is the methodology, because the problem is in all the reorgs that we have done, all the museums where we have gone, people, the management, or even the people who were in charge of the collection, they did not know from where to start. So this methodology helps you to tackle that question, that from where to start. Once you know where to start, once you create a team, or and you start following the method, budget comes little later, and there are a lot of activities that you have to do. Sometimes you have to purchase a furniture. That is the place where you need money. But there are many ways where you can adapt already existing furniture, or you can make a furniture which is not very expensive. So I think budget, material are not at all hindrances, are not at all impediments in starting a reorg. I'll say that first thing is that you go in around your museum or around the ministries where under which your museum comes. You will certainly find the old almiras. You will find the old shelves. For example, in IGNCA, when we were doing reorg, it was the same situation, that everything was on the ground. There was no furniture. But when we went around, we went into the basement and all, we found a lot of discarded shelves, the shelving units. And we cleaned those shelving units and we used them. And once objects were on top of them, there may be a problem that these shelves or these almiras may be rusted. So you can always give a layer of separation with whatever material that is available to you. What we used initially was we were using a lot of acid-free paper, which is easily available. Or if we don't find anything, we were putting canvas cloth, cotton canvas cloth to give a separation.
What I noticed is you don't need extra income. You don't need extra too much budgetary allocation to do it. One can use what he has, and with some innovation and adaptation, one can implement with little or no, perhaps zero budget, one can implement reorg.
I want to say that when you want to do a reorg, don't think about the funding first. Funding is important, but the ability to plan is better. You can start reorg without much money. Without money, if you have the staff there, you can enter the store, and then maybe with your input, the management, when we took the DG then, he was excited about, many people were excited. I think we had taken so many people into the store, and most of them would say, this store looks better than I entered this store. Even some of our partners abroad came in for some selection of objects. The store is better now. I think we can do it even without money, but there's need for little funds, especially when it comes to the building, trying to repair part of the building, sometimes the roof and the rest. Those are little things that you could easily take care of out of whatever monies you make in that particular museum. So I would say that for reorg, get into the spirit of reorg. Try it bit by bit, you'll get there.
Question 9. You had no prior hands-on training on the method. How did you manage using only the reorg resources available online?
So I think although there's a formal reorg method, every organization kind of seems to have a set of unique challenges that they face during the course of their reorg. So the method itself, I would say, is a really great guideline, but if you treat it as something extremely prescriptive, you might be challenged in finding a way to best adapt it to what best suits your organization, your space, your team, your collection. We faced a lot of hiccups along the way, and what was required of us was a flexible approach, but the reorg method was sort of the backbone of the project, if that makes sense. The resources that are available online for the reorg method they're so accessible. It's really easy to go through it and learn what the steps you need to take in the project are. And again, it doesn't have to be in a prescriptive manner, but it gives you a perspective saying, this is what I have to mentally prepare for. This is how I need to physically prepare for the project. These are the steps I need to take to see this project through, and the considerations I have to make in order to implement it effectively. And so I would say, in the end, your collection will benefit from a reorg, no matter what experience you bring to it. And because the resources are so accessible, I think it seems like a daunting task. It was a daunting task for us, and it was greatly successful. I think it's very achievable and a very reasonable expectation to think that you can use the method and make it work for your collection and your space.
Question 10. Reorg can often be seen as that extra thing to do on top of an already busy schedule. How did you manage to integrate it in your museum's day-to-day activities?
This was rather unexpected that the curator wanted to make reorg in his collection. So we first I had to make sure that he really wanted it and that he wanted to commit to it. Means that he was ready to spend time and energy on it and keep working, So we decided that we could actually do it in half a year, permitted that we would have also other group and other team members available. The other important thing was that I was in charge. So I, myself, and the curator were the two persons who had to be there always, from the beginning to the end. And whenever we entered the storeroom, we both had to be there. We collected the whole team on 3 occasions. Initially, first it was when we made some kind of team building. Then it was when we presented them the methodology. And the third time it was when we tried to work out when would each of them be available. We started, and in small groups, we did it step by step. And after approximately 3 months, we realized that now everybody was quite, wanted to carry out this project, wanted to finish it, to do things properly. They had their own ideas already. So later on, it was much easier in the final days of implementation, when we had to bring everything back into the room. We really needed more people. More important thing is that we always had to inform our colleagues who also use the storage when we would be there working, so that we would not interfere with their work and they would not interfere with ours. Everybody actually knew all the time what was going on. Okay. This is important, for them really to feel part of the group and to see the progress.
In the museum, we have different units. Mostly, we did some selection of people to work. Some people volunteered. Some we did selections of people, but mostly documentation staff did the reorg with a bit of input from education staff, as well as maybe some admin people that were interested. Usually we have what you call Wednesday seminars. We combine that to working in the store. Seminars where everybody comes and you are able to teach. We're able to teach the reorg methodology, and those that were interested volunteered to be part of the reorganization of the store. And I think they had a wonderful time. In spite of working, we had to entertain them also to develop interest. So most of them were happy to be part of it. It didn't stop the general administration of the museum. Instead, it enhanced it. It made for excitement. Sometimes the work becomes monotonous. And if you introduce something that is a deviant from your everyday work, it causes excitement. And I think that's what happened at that period in the museum.
Question 11. Do you have any final thoughts or advice for those who are listening to us and want to start a reorg project?
The policy before reorg was storages were meant only to staff. But now we have created sense out of what we have, and we engage, we open it even to the public. Even the issue of inventorization, taking photographs, we have improved. The number of hours that we engage with the objects, have gone up.
Read the reorg website carefully. It will take 1 or 2 days, and if you will start reading it, maybe you will spend 10-15 days. And it has got a lot of videos, it has got a lot of information which helps in starting reorg. And try to find a person who has already done a reorg. I think most of the persons would be very happy to help other person in other part of the world.
It's a very intense period where you're going through with your colleagues, and I think it's important to ask enough help if it's possible. Make sure you have a strong team with enough people.
I think this should be also maybe useful for future storages, collection policy, that people are aware they are not collecting everything. They are collecting something that should be active and should be used in exhibitions, in books, etc. And that we are not a rescue team, that every traditional object should end up in the museum. This is the problem. So this ability to see the value of collection.
My actually advice for everyone is to create a strong team, to share the same idea, same goals that you are going to follow along the way, along the years, and also to be aware of the fact that reorg is a process. Once started, it should not be finished.
It may look a little bit overwhelming, everything, when you are put in a storage room and it has so much stuff and you don't know how to deal with it. Stay calm, take your time, don't do everything alone. Just ask help to other people and follow the steps in the workbook and you'll get there one day.
If you're still actively collecting, one reorg isn't going to do it. In 5 years, you're going to have pieces that maybe they shouldn't quite be there. And if you redo some of the shelf and redo this, everything will fit better. So I think it's just a matter of an ongoing, it's not a static one and done type of thing. It works better if you keep carrying on.
My biggest advice, just do it. I think it's scary, but it's worth doing, especially if you think you need to do a reorg. You probably need to do a reorg. And because the resources are so available online, and I think that it's easy to sort of to access it and say, okay, this is what I need to do. And even though it's a big project, the reorgs seem to be worth it in my experience.
Not to be afraid to reach out to colleagues and other professionals, even though they might not be initially who you think could help. Surprisingly, people have really interesting input, and even people who will benefit from the reorg, what are their expectations, what they might be finding useful, will kind of give a bit more of a guideline to how or what the result of the reorg might be. So just communicating with everyone, basically, as many people as possible.
You know, the ICCROM conference will happen next year, but today they are discussing how to organize it. And one of the things which I liked, somebody said, I don't remember, or I lost the name, because in museums we are sharing the past and creating the future with community. And the objects are so important.
Tu as tout bon? Hello. Heartfelt thanks to all our reorg users for their genuine comments and advice. And please forgive us if we have taken only a few seconds or a few minutes from the long interviews and the very rich information that you could share with us. Now, let's go back to our poll from the beginning. So you have to
Okay,
scroll
so we
maybe.
see, oops, sorry, Catherine.
No,
Yeah.
sorry, please go.
So the first question, do you work in a museum or for museums that need storage reorganization? So we see that most of you attending here today are either working with collections or advise institutions that work with collections. So that's great. It's nice to see you here in such great numbers. So in terms of the things that would prevent you from starting a reorg project, we see that it's financial resources, human resources, lack of space kind of are at the top of the list, which is consistent with a recent poll that we did about a online course that we did on reorg. So it seems to be the primary concern of people. We hope that some of the comments that were shared in the testimonials kind of alleviate some of the concerns about the financial resources, although we'll get into that a little bit more in the questions. Lack of decision-making power also scores quite high. None of this is very surprising. Catherine, do you have any comments on what you see here?
I think, like you said, like, I hope that some of the answers that the reorg users gave kind of match the concern that people have. But I would say that the fourth big issue is the inventory, and the issue of inventory and of backlog.
Yeah.
And as some of the reorg users said, this backlog is not sometimes your responsibility. You arrive in situations that have accumulated for years. So I can understand that it is scary. And we may come back with some questions during the question and answer. Yes?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So if you, I note that some people are raising their hands. We'd ask you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to send your questions and remind you to do so. We're taking them down and we'll address them very soon.
So before we take the questions from the audience, I would like to address our panel, and I'm asking our panel now to open their camera. Gaël, Marioline, and Velko, please join us. And we ask as the last questions to our reorg users, what is your piece of advice, your comment that you would like to give to newcomers to the reorg community? So Gaël, what would be your one comment or piece of advice that you want to give to the newcomers?
Well, first of all, thank you very much and compliment for all what has been said. I learned a lot. Thank you. Thank you for this return of experience is fantastic. And I would like just to say two things. One, concerning what do you do when the storage is full? Full of what? Full of non-collection, which have nothing to do in the storage. In my experience, in 95% of the situation I have faced, when the people responsible told me that the storage was full, I have practically demonstrated that all of them were wrong. In fact, after removing the non-collection, sometimes up to 100 cubic meters, after adapting the width of the alley and adjusting the shelf, plenty of space can be gained. In fact, in all the 27 storage I reorganized in the last 10 years, each time I was told that the storage was full, each time. In practice, only once in Algeria, in Oran, extra space had to be found. And I would like to tell you this little story. When I was called in Iraq, in Suleimaniye, I was called to draw the plan of a new wing for the archaeological storage because the current one was so-called full. In fact, I did nothing as I calculated that with the annual result of the archaeological excavation campaigns, which bring objects every year, the current storage will be full in year 2040. I would not have been there to see what it was, but you see, it was not full at all. Second thing I would like to address to you is to estimate the quantity of furniture needed. First, you have to regroup the object. Let's take those books, group them by categories, 2D or 3Ds. If you take 2Ds, you will group them by dimension, maximum 3, maximum 4. If you store them on racks, calculate by groups. You calculate by groups. For instance, for these groups, you calculate this, the average surface, you multiply it, and you add 10% as you have to move them on the racks. But if you have to store them on shelves, if you have to store them on shelf-like books, you measure how thick. You measure how thick. is the quantity of books you have on this category, and you add 20% space. Concerning 3D object, it is much easier. 3D object, it's much easier. You group them on the ground and measure the surface occupied. What has been said in Canada, when you had a box full of objects, they put them on the ground and measure the surface it was occupied. It will be the surface which will be occupied on the shelf. It will give you the surface needed. That was too little.
Thank you, Gaël. Thank you. We have very little time. Gaël has training in his blood, so thank you for the advice. And I would like now, Veljko, if you have one piece of advice that comes from your experience.
Yes, well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be with you today. Well, one point I would like to highlight is something that is not readily visible in a reorg project. I mean, when you are done with the reorganization of the space, the optimization of the surface, the shelving, and everything, the documenting, the inventory of the objects, at the end, you need to know where they are. So you need to have a proper localization system. That is, for me, something that is of the crucial importance for the success of a reorg project. And over the years, I've seen in a lot of places I worked, incomplete labeling of furniture, sometimes double, sometimes it's partial, sometimes it's completely labeled, but the objects doesn't have their own location codes, and it's not put into the documentation system. So I find this to be very important. And it's very easy to do. I mean, the funny thing is it costs nothing. And basically the worth of the paper the labels are printed on. And it takes 2 hours to do. And of course, it takes a lot more time to input it in the documentation system, but that is something that can be done after the reorg project. And when we mentioned the cost, I mean, we've seen in the poll that that is one of the major concerns of people here today with us. It's actually very, very important because managers and museum directors will first ask you, what is the cost of the reorg project? And of course, sometimes it's very little money, but sometimes when you need to buy the furniture, the boxes, the padding material, whatever, it has to cost something. But it is our job and it is our recommendation in the method that we try to reuse and recycle as much material as we could find in a museum. So if we will have some more questions on it, we will comment on that, but that will be it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Veljko. In fact, I just want to remember one of the users mentioning that after the reorg, the actual inventory work durates 3 years. So it can take a long time to actually input everything correctly in your database. Marioline, do you have one little piece of comment for our newcomers?
Yes, I would like to react on the first question in the video, how to convince managers and curators to do a reorg project and to start with reorg and to give time to people to work on reorg. We all together worldwide, but also we in our own countries and in our small professional fields, I think we have to raise awareness about storage. We have to raise awareness about storage and raise the profile of reorg and our and your reorg projects. In Belgium, as I'm working for a federal institution, I was able to give visibility to issues in storage and the potential of reorg by launching, for example, a national reorg strategy and organizing reorg workshops, but also by organizing national and international reorg seminars and study days, big study days, small study days, And the fact that unexpectedly 200 participants subscribed from all over the world to an international reorg seminar, this helped inside of Belgium, and I hope also worldwide, to show managers and curators that the concerns about storage are big and that the need to find solutions are urgent. And just to conclude, after 10 years of reorg, we all together realized that we have to convince our curators, managers, directors, and politicians to support reorg projects by showing them the potential of accessible collections, of collections, and that reorg helps to open collections to students, to researchers, to children, to make exhibitions. And that's why 2 years ago, together with many partners here, which are here, we launched an international competition, which is called Share.org. And this was to promote the creative use of all those underused museum collections in storage. That was a little tip.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marjolein. I must say that in all the story of reorg, you know, the development and the last 10 years, it has been a struggle even for us to try to raise the awareness about this issue. So we really need to campaign and to be together. The more we are, I think, the more it will help to convince management and to convince decision makers. Now, we're going to take the questions from the audience, and actually I will ask Simon if it's possible that he lead that process and pose the questions. So please, Simon, your turn.
Sure. There's a really nice transition from what we were just talking about. So the first question we have is that we see that some people in the questions were interested in creating networks for exhibitions or storage. And I'd like to ask you, Marjolaine, from your experience, how can reorg help to connect museums together?
I think the question came from Ecuador, if I'm right. I was preparing an answers, and my tips for this this person who is following the webinar is but for all of us is to connect first of all to the reorg social media that are created, like the International Reorg Facebook page, the Twitter and YouTube accounts, but also if you want to connect, or if you want to create a reorg network, start small but think big. And so, if in my opinion, for example, for the person who asked the question in Ecuador, I would contact ICCROM to ask somewhere around in South America, is there a strategy? Is there someone already started to launch some workshops? We know, I can tell you, in Chile, there is someone who is taking care about reorg. So try to find connections. It's like Achal said in the video, we are all very keen to continue to stay in touch. And so I would say perhaps try to find people around in your province or in the small field of your professional colleagues to, like I said, organize a small seminar, a small study day to say that, to raise awareness, and then you have people coming and to create really a physical and also, of course, a social network online and things like that. But as you see, we are all connected, and this makes us very powerful. And I think it's just a way to start to talk about what is really your concern. And I saw that it is to organize a small exhibition and to find people who have the same issues.
Thank you very much. I think I'd just like to add too that it seems that when people realize that they're all in the same boat and they all have the same problems, and it's sometimes very taboo, but as soon as people realize that there's other people facing the same issues, there immediately is this kind of sense of community that's created. So reorg kind of organically becomes a nice way to connect people because they're all facing the same challenges. Great, thank you very much for that answer. The next question is about funding. And I'd like to direct it to Velko. So someone asks, how can reorg be zero funded when you have to buy more shelves or installing racks? And I know, Ashal, in your presentation, you sent us, you spoke about funding, and you did send us some information about the costs of the various projects that you undertook, which unfortunately we couldn't present today because of time. But I was wondering, after Velko has a chance to answer the question, if you could perhaps turn on your camera and share an example of small expenses that were incurred in, let's say, one of your projects. So Velko?
Well, yeah, thank you. Well, to be very precise in answering that question, if you really need to buy shelves and other furniture, it cannot be zero fund. But there's a lot of ways you can cut down on a project cost. And one thing that came to my mind is the human resources. So if the museum has sort of a technical support, and it is equipped with some basic tools, you can save a lot of money for not hiring external help to do the reorganization, to do the adaptation of furniture or whatever is needed. So I guess that's it. I mean, I don't know if Gael could add something on that.
Look, certainly, you see in several cities, when we were working with in a museum which belonged to the city staff has been tremendously helpful. I can give an example. In India, for instance, we had about 40 cubic meter of mess, which was in the courtyard that we have removed from the storage, and it was in the courtyard of the museum. I had a dinner with the mayor. He said, "Can I help you?" I say, "Yes, yes." Say, "Could you send us a bulldozer and a lorry?" And the next morning, it was during dinner, the next morning at 8 o'clock when we arrived, there were 2 bulldozers and 3 lorries, and they removed everything. But sure, when you have to buy, absolutely, you buy some furniture, it is complicated to say, it costs nothing, you have to buy it. But you don't buy the best quality, you buy what you have, and a storage, a shelf can cost 10, and another one can cost 50. Well, you buy the one which costs 10, and you hope that one day you will have a better one, the one that you can exchange, that you can move easily and so on. But you try to be inventive and to find simple solution. Be inventive.
Thank you, Gael. That's great advice. Ashal, are you still with us?
Yes,
Would you be able to turn on your?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. In fact, I'm so happy that Simo is here. When I did my first reorg in India, Simo was also one of the trainers in that workshop. And that was in 2011. And
10 years ago.
Yes, so we spent like 1,000 rupees on that, which is less than 11 euros or $12, $13. So I will really correct myself that we really buy something. Sometimes we buy things for 2 or 3 euros. I'll give you an example that when we were in Alvar, we had one rack which had camel guns on it, and we had some camel guns which were on the floor. So we just bought few U-shaped hook like this. I don't know whether you can see it or not. U-shaped hook, and these hook were put on this shelf, and again we had now the double space for keeping the things. We in fact, one has to be inventive And I'm not saying if my answer is not that we don't spend any money on storage furniture. My answer is that when you have no money, even then you can, first of all, you plan the thing according to the reorg methodology, which is easily available on your website, on Facebook, and you can contact anyone. I think there would be around 150, 200 or more than that people who will be able to provide you with the reorg methodology in the world without any problem. Once you have done that exercise, then adapting the existing furniture or finding a discarded furniture. You can find a rusted furniture in your office or in your museum or in a museum which is next to you, which is of no use to them. It has been discarded. That furniture has been used. And in case of India, we have used this type of furniture in 90% of the cases. 90%, it is not less. And I will also give you an example. Recently, we have shifted our center, art center, with 110,000 articles from one building to the other building. And again, as Gail was telling me, everyone was telling me that there is shortage of space in the new building. But now when everything has been organized, I will not say reorganized because it is a new building, everything has been organized. We have space for even double the quantity which is now accommodated in that place. So that is the thing. And we have used only the recycled material with the existing good quality furniture which were available.
Thank you very much, Ashad. Marie-Hélène, I think you have something to add?
Yes, I just want to add that I know that there are people listening from Belgium who used reorg in a small storage to really to get everything reorganized, and they reused their furniture. But you have also reorg which can be used to know what you need to dream and to create a new storage with good furniture, new furniture. When you have the funding, you should go for it, and you can use and you should use the money well. But these are also reorg projects, so you can use the reorg method for very complex or very bad storage situations, but you can use also reorg for a situation which you want to make even better, and to show I need this and this furniture, and please give me that money, or we have an amount of money, and reorg using the method shows what you need to buy.
Thank you. Next question, I think will be for Gaël. And someone asks, did you have a climate controlled storage space to do reorg? If not, did you do it anyway? So is climate controlled spaces, is it necessary? Is it a prerequisite to undertake a reorg project? Gaël? Oh, we need to unmute.
Here, you can hear me. My answer is, for me, look, in all the space I have been, I have asked the people first, have you a problem of climate? Yes. Say, show me one object that you have seen which has been damaged in the storage. One. It's happened in 27 storage once. It was in Serbia, where there were molds. That's all. For me, the object generally, the object have been used to this type of climate. The problem raised when you change an object, which is in the basement, and you move it further to the top floor. Here you can have problems. But the climate, for me, is not a problem I take into account. It will shock you, but I want to say it in 15 seconds. I say it is not a problem. It is worthwhile a whole conference on this. I will say, just lately, I have planned just lately, we are planned next week, a storage where they have the possibility, they have a lot of arms and armors and so on. They have the possibility to have a kind of hospital, a room where there is a money, thank God, we will put a dehumidifier. But for the rest, for me, it is not a problem. It is a fake problem.
Thank you, Gael. Moving on to the next question. And maybe I will ask this question to all of you, considering all the projects that you've seen over the years. Someone says, I'm glad to hear that your experience of the reorg led you to more research on the collection. Could you elaborate on this? So are there examples where, you know, the post-reorg, there has been an increase in the use of collections for research or for other types of activities? Who wants to go first? Marjolaine?
Okay, let's go. So I will talk. I will just use the three winners of the ShareOrg competition, which we launched all together. There is one museum who was very inventive with showing reorg helped to restore a very large collection of miniatures. It was a museum in Lisbon, in Portugal. And so first of all, we organized together with Gael, Velkio and ICCROM a reorg workshop there. And afterwards, they were able to access those very special objects again. They were able to take time to restore them, and they made a huge and very beautiful exhibition about these objects who were inaccessible before. So first of all, you have the exhibitions, which you can make when you have finished your reorg project. The second project was a nice one also. It was also during COVID. After the storage had been reorganized and was easy to access again, and it was good to show everything. Everything was in place and clear, and we could find back everything. They made a video and a movie, a virtual tour, an online virtual tour of the storage. And so they made, in that way, they made the storage accessible even online for which public which is interested. I know that from the museum, it's a museum in Turnhout in Belgium, that they have many different visitors online to look at the video. There are professionals who want to know about how things are stored. So this is more our professional field. How are they storing their textiles or big furniture? And then otherwise, it's the public which is interested in know things behind the scenes, a trigger which is a big trigger for a general public. So that's the virtual tour to make the storage accessible online. And the third winner, that's another example, that was really for education. So they used the collections, they reorganized the collections, small collections, which was from I don't find the words. Some people here can help me, but a shoemaker, a shoe shop in Italy. And his collection was made accessible to schools, to children. And through the reorg project, it was made more accessible. And that were inventive projects after a reorg or during a reorg project. So these are some tips.
Thank you. We only have a couple of minutes left for questions. So I would maybe ask Velkio or Gael if you want to comment on this question.
Well, I would just like to add that it's not just researchers, it's not just the accessibility of, but you see when you don't have your storage reorganized and organized, when you have obstacles, when you have objects on the ground, actually the curators don't feel well inside. and they don't like to go in their own storage. So I think we had some examples of curators not going down to the storage for years. And that is a problem. Other than that, I think in most of the reorg projects that we did, we would always find objects that were hidden for a long time, really long time. So we witnessed the director saying that she's looking at the objects she hasn't seen for 10 years or something. Or curators saying that they were looking for these specific objects for some time now. And they were very, very happy to have found them and rediscovered them.
Thank you, Velko. Catherine, I believe there's a final question that you would like to ask from the audience. Whoops, you are on mute.
No, that's it.
Okay. No, I think, unfortunately, we have to close in 5 minutes, so I think we won't take other questions, but there is one thing I would like to say, is that we have received also very nice comments from the participants, which I hope I can capture in a way after this meeting. And if there was one objective that we had today with this webinar, is to encourage you to start. And I think that is what we would like to say. It's, you know, maybe you think no money, no people, but you will find with the manual is not the method, I'm sorry, is not something that you, as some of the users said, is not a prescriptive things that you have to do, but it gives you, because it is based on so many different experiences around the world, it gives you the right questions to ask to yourself. It gives you the tool to make, to make your project, to define your project to managers. It helps you to think, but then you have to do your decisions. You have to find your solutions. And that is what I have loved over all these years, is the way in which it has empowered people, you know, to step out and really try to do something for their collections. So I would like to warmly thank all our speakers for their testimonials and also for their reflections. It has been a beautiful experience for me to bring the voices from the users and to allow them to compare experience across the world. Thank you also to you all, dear participants, for your attention and for your comments and your questions. We hope you feel more confident and motivated, and that some new inspiring reorg projects will follow. Again, please keep in touch at reorg@ICCROM.org. If you have more questions, you can ask them at that address. I would like to offer a big thank to all the ICCROM team. Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to give the floor again to Simon. I'm sorry, Simon. You want to?
No, that's fine. That's fine. No problem. I'll let you finish your thought, and I'll go after you.
Please go.
Okay. So, sorry to interrupt, Catherine. I also wanted to thank all the contributors, the audience, the panel members, and as this slide comes up on the screen, it's an opportunity for me to remind you that all the reorg material is available online on a dedicated page of the ICCROM website, but also on platforms such as YouTube and Tumblr. The material continues to evolve with new tools and new languages being added frequently. And coming this fall, there will be a new resource for reorg coaches. So look out for that and stay connected. As Catherine mentioned, if you have any questions, we really warmly encourage you to reach out to a fellow reorg user or to contact us at reorg@icrom.org.
So now that we have thanked everyone, I would like to also thank the ICCROM team behind the scenes who makes everything happen. They are committed to bring you every time new perspectives on conservation through the ICCROM lecture series. So if you would like other conference on other topics, please contact ICCROM. And finally, don't forget that this session, as all the former ones, are broadcast on the YouTube channel of ICCROM. The next webinar, Elisa, maybe you want to show the next, the slide for the next webinar. The next webinar is on 23rd September. It is in Spanish. And I also promised the Spanish reorgers that we will do another webinar in Spanish. So the next webinar is on the 23 September and is about the fight against illicit traffic. Happy continuation of your day, and thank you very much for your participation.